Recording in progress.
Okay, let us go. Hi everyone, my name is Caleb Cho. I'm one of the judges for this competition, but we'll also be doing some workshops here. So this is an introductory video on how to do some Python, one of the most popular languages, at least the one that I use the most often. So the IDE, which is sort of the app that one uses to program with that I'm using is called Visual Studio Code. So let's get started. The way that I set up this Python underscore tutorial.py is you just do file, new window, and then like new file, Python file, and then you can change its name by doing file save or file save as. So first things first, let's do a very basic print statement. So if you want to do comments, which are lines of code that don't actually run anything, they're just there so that you understand what you're doing, you can do this. Hashtag printing text. Anyone starts with a hashtag. If you want to save, do Command S or Control S, depending on if you're on Windows or Mac. Just put some fun stuff in here. Don't mind me. And then you do our actual print statement, which is like print hello world, save that. If we want to actually run this, we go to terminal, new terminal, wait for it to load. And then we can do Python. This is on my desktop. So to do cd desktop to get to this folder. And let me just double check that it is indeed on my desktop. Yep. And then you do Python, whatever the name of your file is. So in this case, Python tutorial.py. And then you can see it prints out hello world, what we said to print out. So you can do a bunch of different things within those parentheses. There's different formatting that you can do in case you want to do like tabs, very specific like apostrophes in there. But that's the basics of print statements. Now we're going to talk a little bit about variables. So variables, as the name suggests, can store information, but that information can change over time. In other words, it's variable. So let's say we have this variable called meal, and then we store the word English muffins. So then we can say print breakfast, that, and then add meal. But let's say we want to change what the variable is to something else. Let's change the variable to something else. And then we can say the meal is a pizza with pepperoni. Pepperoni and cheese. That. So then we can print. Let's say we're having lunch plus meal. Okay. Make sure to save before you run in terminal. So let's do Python underscore tutorial.py. So you can see that the first time we got breakfast, English muffin, lunch, pizza with pepperoni and cheese. So that's how one can use variables. There are different types of variables. So one of them is an integer, which is like a whole number. So for example, our integer equals 5. There's also a float, which is like a floating point decimal number. So for example, our underscore float equals, let's say 3.65. We can then add them together, store the result in another variable, and then print it out. So our result equals, let's say, underscore integer plus our underscore float, and print that out. Save Python underscore tutorial dot py, and then you can see we got 8.65, which is the sum of those two numbers. So let me just make sure I illustrate this one very important difference. So let's say we have an integer number 2. Then we also have a string number 2. Make sure you understand the difference between these two. And then we do result equals int num plus string num. And then run Python underscore tutorial dot py again. And then you see we get this error. Type error, unsupported operand types for plus, int and string. Well, why does this not work? It's because the two are two different variable types, and it does not work for plus. Plus only works with integers or floats, like actual numbers instead of strings, which are just like strings of letters, strings of characters. So if we want to fix this, what we can do is in this example. So let's say my underscore age equals 18. I am 18 years old. You can change it to be your age. And then we can do print. Let's say I am space plus the string function my underscore age plus space years old. So what that does right here is it converts this int variable that we have my underscore age into a string version of it. So if we were to save that, run it again, then we get I am 18 years old. And this is really useful in case we just want to use this string part of 18 right here, but then want to do some, let's say, addition later on with this number. We don't have to do so much work. So just going through the mathematical operators, of course, you got plus, you've got minus, you've got exact division, which is just 1/, but you've also got integer division, which just rounds to the doesn't necessarily round to the nearest whole number, it just leaves off the decimal. Okay. So let's do a quick exercise that goes over pretty much everything that we have gone through. So we're going to write a simple Olympic judging program. So let's say Judge A gives this Olympian, this athlete, 10 points out of 10. And the second one gives them 9 points. The last one gives them 8 points. And we want to calculate what each judge's score was and what the average score was. So we can first add them all up. So score underscore sum equals all of them added up. And then we can take the average just by dividing the sum by 3. So we can then do a print statement to say average score that plus string score underscore average. Let's run that, see what happens. Let me see. 1 sec. Did a quick error, which I'll just fix right now. Yep, there we go. Average score 9.0, which is exactly what we want. Now let's talk a little bit about functions, which we can do. So the way it works is you define a function, usually with def, and then you do whatever you want to call the function. In this case, we'll call it greeting, followed by some parentheses, and then this would be whatever happens within that function, similar to like a math function, if you will. So let's just have a bunch of print statements. My name is Caleb. Then this one last one. How can I help you? And then outside of this function definition, we are going to call it like so. Greeting with these parentheses. And then we can say Python underscore tutorial .py. And you can see we print all these statements that we had within this function. The functions are really useful in case you want to repeat a certain task multiple times, such as like do this one greeting. But what's even cooler is we can do things like this. This is just an example right now to show an error. So let's say name equals Caleb within the function, print hello plus name like that, do greeting, then print name. Watch what happens very carefully. Tutorial.py, and you can say, see name error, name is not defined. Well, why is that? We said name equals Caleb here. Well, this is the reason why. It's because of something called scope, where if we say name here, that only applies to within the world of this function. It doesn't apply to outside. So if we wanted to change it, we would have to put name equals Caleb outside of this function, usually at like the very top. So let's do that, make sure our indents are good. Do that, save it, then do Python. I think we can actually do this. You can use the arrow keys to scroll to your most recent commands within your terminal. So we can just do that. And then you can see it actually works this time when we put name equals Caleb outside of our function greeting. We can also do something cool where it's like name equals Lucas, for example, within the function and a different name here, and you can see what happens. Where because the Lucas name was within the function, we say hello Lucas, but then outside of the function name is Caleb. You can also pass in parameters to functions, and like functions can have multiple parameters. So let's edit this greeting function to be a little bit better. So we can say def greeting, put name as one of the parameters, and do that. And then do greeting Caleb, greeting John, for example, greeting Jacob. So let's see what happens. That is why I forgot to put some double brackets around here, double apostrophes, whatever you call them. Do now it works. We can also do temp, which for temperature. So print it is plus temp degrees outside. So let's say it is 67 for Caleb, 42 for John, and then 78 for Jacob. We run it. Got a switch string. My bad. Programming, as some of you may know, is all about correcting your mistakes and dealing with it. As someone once said to me, if you ever curse on your code, just take a moment, stop, and try and figure out what's wrong. So you can see it's now working. It doesn't matter if you're using a string for one of them and an int for another parameter within your function, it'll still work. We can also, instead of doing print statements, we can change this, return, hello, this person, it is this temperature today. We'll have to convert that to a string, then do the same, similar thing with greetings, so Caleb, and then 42, then run that. Gotcha. About to close the bracket, save that. Right. So that didn't do anything. We actually have to assign it to a variable. So we say greeting equals greeting. Or let's actually change the word greet equals greeting to make it clearer. Then we can print our greet. And then you can see it works. Sorry, just no spacing error. Let's just run that again. Yep. So return just means that that function sort of has the output, like name, temp are your inputs, return is your output. And then if you want to actually be able to see that in terminal, you have to print it by assigning it to a variable. We're now going to be talking about something I really enjoy called conditionals. You probably have seen it encode if-else statements or if-then statements. So let's do a very simple example. So we're going to start with something called a Boolean, which is like a true-false statement. So let's say green light equals true. If green light, we can print go, else, print stop, something like that. Very simple. So let's see that. So since green light was true, that's what if green light means, then we can print go. But what happens if we change it to false? Well, this first part is not true. It's not, green light isn't true, so we skip if green light, and we go straight to this else statement. Like whatever else, if this doesn't happen, then just do this. So we printed stop. There are some fun, apologies, I just sneezed, some fun comparison operators. So let's say group, let's delete all that, test equals 2. So you can do if test equals 2, print test is 2 or something. That's check if two expressions are equal. You can do greater than or less than this way. Similar thing, you can just do these two for greater than, less than. This is greater than equal to, less than equal to. Sorry about that earlier. And then if you want to test if two things are not equal to each other, you do an exclamation point and then an equal sign. And it doesn't just have to be numbers. You can say like test underscore string equals pink during one of your if statements, which is really helpful. It doesn't just have to be integers. It doesn't have to be just numbers for like the equals stuff. What next? let's do, and then like you can put if statements within your functions, pretty much anything you can put in the function. Instead of just if and else, you can also use something called elif, which is short for else if. So let's say you say if light equals red, print stop, and then you can do elif light is yellow. So else if light equals yellow, you can do print slow down, else print print go. Because by this point we're pretty much assuming that it's just a green light. So you can do elif in case you want to do some other condition beyond just like that last else, which takes into account anything that you haven't talked about earlier. You can also, if you want to check if multiple things are true or if things are not true, you can do if bool underscore a and bool underscore b. So if the two booleans are true, if either one of them is true, so if at least one of them is true, then this would return true. Or if bool A, not bool B. So if this one is true, but not that one. So if only this one is true, then this whole thing will return true. Lots of logic. Don't have to understand everything, but that's generally how it works. Now let's talk about loops, which is how you can do a bunch of things multiple times. So one of them that you can do is you can use a I'm sorry, just gotta check my notes. You can do a, let's get there, so sorry. You can do a while loop. So you can say while command equals go, for example, like print keep on going. And it'll print keep on going so many times until it doesn't work, until this condition is untrue, until like command is stopped, for example. There's also something called for loops. So you can do for I in range 4. So do whatever you want to do 4 times, print. This is, let me just fix that. This is iteration number plus string I. Good thing to note is that in most programming languages, Python included, counting starts at 0, which is very helpful because a lot of things start indexing at 0. So let's get that done. As you can see, it says this is iteration number 0, 1, 2, 3. I is just a placeholder value. J is another common one that you might see because you can also do like for J in range 3, then put that in there. This is plus string I times J. You'll see some weird stuff happen. Forgot to put a colon there. My bad. You see some fun numbers. So this is what happens. So J in range 3 runs. So you go J's 0, J's 1, J's 2, but at that time I is still just 0. So you can see that sort of happening in here. So fun stuff. I is just a placeholder. This could be tacos, for example. Replace that with tacos, and it'll still be the same thing. You can do some other sort of stuff instead of range 4, just something that gets you any number, and you can also do like string tacos -3. Like you can use it as if you would use like a normal int or such. Let's talk about lists, which are just a collection of a bunch of stuff. So let's say you're doing your groceries. So you do a list by doing 2 square brackets, and then we can add some stuff like milk to the groceries list. We can add eggs, we can add bread, and then we can say for item in groceries. Items is just a placeholder. Groceries is just everything here. Say print item, which would just print everything that we have. So we got milk, we've got eggs, we've got bread. As you can see, that's how it works. We can do some fun stuff with some operations. Let's say we've got num list equals 1 through 5. Then we can do print max num list. We can do min. We can do sum of everything in there. And probably the most useful one is length. It just gets you the length of that list. So let's see what happens when we run this. 5, which is the max number. 1 is the minimum. 15, add up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 5 is the length because there are 5 elements in that list. And that's pretty much all of the basics that you need to understand in order to do some Python. Hope this was really helpful. And I'll be running a short AI presentation on Wednesday. Maybe include some other important Python libraries that you'll learn about. If you're interested in understanding this Visual Studio Code, the app that I'm using to do some coding, or want recommendations for any other apps that are a bit easier to code in, just let me know and I would be more than happy to help you. Have a good night.